Hi everyone. As we depart the 9 days and end the intense morning season this Shabbos Nachamu, I find myself trying to take a lesson or two to drive me forward, particularly during this season. What can be said to connect the last 3 weeks of sadness, of mourning, of loss, to the weeks ahead as we shift focus to what will likely be a most unique Elul and Yamim Noraim season? There has to be a link. After all, we spent 3 weeks in Haftaros that focus on negativity and pain, and 7 more in Nechama and consolation prior to Rosh Hashanah, Shabbos Shuvah, and Yom Kippurim. What message are we to make from all of it? Moreover, and perhaps more immediately, there are still 2+ weeks to Av to contend with before we begin the Elul Tshuva season and start to hear the sounds of the shofar and the Sephardic Selichot. What should we be thinking about now? What should we be thinking about now as we set personal goals in the rush up to Elul during these consolation weeks with an almost 3-week gap? This morning, perhaps as a reaction to the current 9-day restrictions almost over, I would like to suggest that an answer comes in the personality of one individual who has played an essential role in the history of the world, but a more central one to the beginning of the month of Av. I refer, of course, to the milkman. Yes, you heard me. The milkman, today somewhat of a dying breed, was a critical, consistent member of the old-time community. He was the eyes and the ears of the community. He was the trusted family friend and the cheerful man in the neighborhood. Clyde Priest of Hannibal, Missouri, had been one of the few remaining milkmen in the country until he retired in 2006. And by that time, the 80-year-old man had been delivering milk for over 70 years, having started working as a boy, a 10-year-old boy, on his father's truck. And during his 70 years of work, he outlived eight local dairy companies where he had purchased his milk. And when he asked how and why he lasted so long, he noted that my theory all these years has been, you could buy milk anywhere. The only thing I gotta sell is my personal service. That was my philosophy, and I loved every minute of it. And like Priest, consistency, dedication, and discovering new avenues of personal service were the lessons that milkmen were known for everywhere. It's not surprising that these lessons are the ones we find most pronounced in the parashios we read at this time, and especially in the Haftaros of consolation. And whom better to deliver that message but the milkman himself? You see, the late great Gaon, Rav Chaim Cohen Zatzal, also known as the Kabbalist, the Chalban, or the milkman, explains that the Haftorah of Shabbos Nachamu is a form of appeasement. In essence, says the Chalban, after all of the destruction, after all the desolation and the exile, Hashem is telling us He still wants us back. We served our time. We received our punishment. And we are prepared, if we are prepared to do tshuva, we are welcome to come back. However, before we do tshuva, we need to know what the work entails. We need to see the bigger picture. And in order to see and engage the avoda or the work, we ought to have to look at the bigger picture. Many of the issues, on an individual level at least, stem from the fact that we're not cognizant of or even able to see Hashem's presence in an open way. In the same open way that our forebears did in the time of the first Beis HaMikdash. You see, back then, the farmer, the money changer, the storekeeper, and yes, even the milkman experienced Hashem's presence and His expectations of each and every one of us within our lines of work, in the same parallel manner to that of the Kohen, who would pilgrimage with his family to represent the Jewish people as one of the mishmaros working in the Beis HaMikdash. Regular trips to the Beis HaMikdash for Sukkot, for Pesach, for Shavuos, as well as other personal opportunities to interact with Hashem, like when bringing Bikurim, or a Korban Toda, or yes, for the sprinkling of para aduma water or the bringing of chatas or an asham when an individual went off the path and became tameh or guilty of sin. Each of these opportunities reminded each and every member of Klal Yisrael repeatedly that Hashem's presence was around them constantly. The people living back then, they understood the concept of Avodas Hashem daily, and thus, when they engaged it, they were already ready to do the job. They knew what they had to do in order to strengthen and repair weak parts of seeing Hashem. And by the time they got to Elul, they were ready to do it. Today, with the loss of Hashras Hashchina, the loss of the experience of the divine presence in our daily activity, before we engage in tshuva, we need to gear up personally to chart the path for return. And this, says the Chalban the milkman, is the job of the rest of the month of Av. He adds that the name Av can be an acronym for Elul Ba. Av, Elul is coming. Av is the time to focus on the great attributes of the milkman, those of consistency, of dedication, of discovering new avenues of personal service, and to strengthen them for the intensive Elul and Yamim Noraim experience. Allow me to add, please, that it's not an accident that the parshios of this immediate season, of Eschanan, of Ekev, of Re'eh, of Shoftim, which deal primarily with the Avodas Hashem in daily practice, are the ones that get highlighted, particularly right now. We need and can take the time to see Hashem's strong hand in every aspect of our daily living, and to take the opportunity to note that we can bring it even closer into our lives. Finding Hashem consistently in our daily living, in the things that we see, in the way that we work, or we vacation, or we leisure, in the reasons that we do that which we do, in the way that Hashem runs the world, looking for new ways to relate to Hashem, and to doing so with dedication. That's the primary role of the next 3 weeks, so that we can be ready to properly prepare to repair and enhance our relationship with Hashem. And as such, on this Shabbos, the Shabbos of Shabbos Nachamu, I allow me to issue a challenge to you and to all of yours. Dear friends, got milk? Shabbat Shalom to all.